It's time for this week's episode of Brandon's Sports Talk.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Princeton's men's head water polo coach, Coach Dustin Litvak. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college water polo?
Yeah, so I started coaching water polo actually my senior year of high school. After I finished my season, it was the first ever girls water polo team at Agoura High School, and I became an assistant coach for the head coach there, and just kind of fell in love with coaching and did it all through college. And then after a few years working in the television business, I realized my passion was still in coaching and came back to coaching water polo and just kind of got the bug and wanted to kind of move up as high as I could and really wanted to work with people who are really serious about, the sport and passionate about being the best they could be. And so just kind of figuring out a path that I could keep improving and keep gaining knowledge and move as high as I could. And just really wanted to get the experience of coaching at the collegiate level. So I think it's a lot of just being passionate about the sport and being passionate about working with, young student athletes who really want to be the best they can be.
What was your experience like going to Pepperdine and then obviously getting involved in U.S. water polo with youth?
I mean, Pepperdine was great. I actually started off as a coaching and teaching major at Pepperdine, and then quickly got involved, as I mentioned, in the television department and changed my major to that, but immediately, started coaching. And it was great to be at Pepperdine because it was so close to my alma mater, Agoura High School, where I could continue to coach and go to class at the same time and work through that. And while I didn't play water polo at Pepperdine, I was friends with a lot of the players and obviously went to a lot of the games. And my freshman year was the year they won NC2As, one of the only times a non-Big Four school has won. Unfortunately, it was in Florida, so I didn't get to go. But it was still a great experience to see, the school I was attending, win the national championship in water polo. So I absolutely loved my time at Pepperdine. USA Water Polo is a whole different ball game that I got involved in just through just pursuing opportunities and getting to know the right people and just kind of being a student of the game and working with USA Water Polo. I mean, for one, I got to travel to a lot of great places and see some unbelievable pools and really just learn a lot about the sport. It's such a big sport in Eastern Europe and really all over Europe. So getting to travel to places like Hungary multiple times, Croatia, Barcelona, even South America and in Canada for games and seeing where some previous Olympics were held, being in the same pools and really seeing how those athletes train and how they treat it. It's a different experience. I mean, when you go over to Europe, and a lot of those places, water polo is their main sport or maybe their second main sport. So you get off the airport in Croatia and there are pictures of water polo players like you would see basketball NBA players here, and they're very recognizable as celebrities, around the city. And their games are really well attended and just some amazing crowds. So it's just a different experience, and then working with the U.S. athletes, obviously you're working with young women and men. I worked a lot with the youth team and the junior team. So these are athletes who are anywhere from 15 to 18 years old who have, Olympic aspirations and dreams of being on the next Olympic cycle or next Olympic team. So it's great to work with athletes who are that passionate and serious about their sport and their craft and are willing to sacrifice a lot and give up a lot for their, what they want to get out of their career. And seeing again, how important water polo is to some of these other countries. It's just nothing like it.
What were some of your favorite memories and moments, of course, coaching the U.S. water polo?
I mean, there was a lot. I obviously really enjoy working with a lot of the top coaches. I think Junior World in Nambate, Hungary, working with James Lathrop and Brett Ormsby was phenomenal. Working with Brett again in Peru for Junior Pan Am or Youth Pan Am, and winning that tournament. The sightseeing that we got to do along those trips as well. I was the assistant coach for the first ever Youth Worlds in Perth, Australia. So that was really an amazing experience. We did a week and a half training in Singapore before that, and really try to introduce the sport there. And I know that they're growing a sport there, but that was a great experience. So I think just all the different places that I've been able to go, and like I mentioned before, just kind of seeing the sport at a high level, and really learning from what these other teams are doing.
What was it like going back to your high school and coaching at your alma mater of your high school for water polo?
I mean, I think like anybody who plays a sport, in high school or college, right? I mean, you just become a fan of that school for life. And so part of it's just kind of in your blood, and having the opportunity to go back and take over the boys program and try to build it into what I think I had a vision to do, and to work with those student athletes and give them exposure and experience was awesome. I mean, it's some of the best memories I have coaching, for sure. It's number one, such an influential part of their life. I love working at Princeton now and with the college age athletes, but when you have kids from 13, 14, through 18, I mean, these are transformative years, and you're really dealing with a lot of things that are going on in their lives, inside and outside the pool. So to be able to help them through that, and also to be able to help them get, move on to college, if they choose to play or not, is really special. And I think, from a water polo standpoint, there's this kind of perception there was, at least at the time when I took over in Southern California, that if you're not in Orange County, you're not really a serious water polo program. And my alma mater, Agoura, is 45 minutes north of LA, and, good 2 hours from Orange County. And so it was a good program, don't get me wrong. And there were a lot of good programs in our area north of Santa Barbara. Harvard Westlake, of course, is a dominant program. But again, there's this, this perception that you can't build anything, superior outside of Orange County. And so that was kind of our mindset, is what's the difference, and the difference really was they just trained more, trained harder, smarter, and really created the right culture. And so that's what we set out to do. And I think why we had so much success is we found the athletes and the parents that really wanted to buy into not settling for the status quo of just being a good program, but really trying to establish ourselves as a great program.
What was it like getting your first college coaching job after obviously coaching at your alma mater of high school?
Yeah, so I guess my college coaching experience was interesting. My first experience was, so in 2007, there used to be a rule in Southern Section CIF where they didn't allow high school coaches to coach in the off season very much. It was very limited, and there were association rules. So I kind of thought I was going to be done coaching high school because I couldn't afford it really just to coach high school, and looked into college, and that way I could continue to coach club and coach 9 months out of the year instead of 3 months out of the year with the high school kids. So I went to Occidental College and helped out on the women's side for a couple of months with Larry Zubrin. And that was awesome. Larry gave me a lot of responsibility, and I really enjoyed working with him and the ladies in that program. But ultimately it was just too far of a drive for me. So I had to give that up. And also the CIF Southern Section changed the rules so that you could coach in the off season. So I went back to Agoura. And at the same time, then in 2010, I got offered an assistant coach position at USC on both the women's and men's programs. And that was an unbelievable opportunity, and really thank them for thinking of me and including me. But again, ultimately financially, I couldn't make it work. It was one of those things where it just didn't pay enough if I wasn't able to coach club at the same time. And because all their practices were in the evenings, you couldn't do both. So I only stayed there for 3 weeks. It had nothing to do with the coaching staff or the university or anything like that. It just financially wasn't going to work. And then, of course, I was fortunate enough for someone else to give me a chance after leaving too previously. But at UCLA, I got a call from Dan Layson, who at the time had been the assistant at UCLA. And he was also the head coach of Rose Bowl, who was one of the rivals of the club that I was the head coach of, Los Angeles Water Polo. And he asked me if I wanted to, think about his job at Rose Bowl. He accepted a position at UC Davis and was leaving. And I said at the time I wasn't, but I was interested in his UCLA job as the assistant there at the men's side. So met with Adam Wright, the head coach, and really got to understand what the job was all about, talked to Dan about it a lot. So got hired as the assistant men's water polo coach, I believe in July of 2013 or June or July of 2013 at UCLA. And, my dad went to UCLA, and so I grew up a Bruin fan, and it was really a dream come true, and I absolutely loved, working with those student athletes. A lot of them I had known already. One of them I had coached in high school, a few of them I had coached in club. And then a bunch of them I had coached with the junior and youth national team. So I had a good idea of most of the athletes in that program. Obviously I had followed their program, as a fan. So it was just like, it was like going to water polo school. I don't know any other way to explain it. I mean, Adam is an absolute genius when it comes to the sport and the way to train athletes, and his success speaks for itself. But you have to go to the practices and really see how he works in the office and the preparation that he puts into film review, into practice planning, into game prep, to really understand, what it means to be a coach at that level. And so for me, I mean, there's no way I'd be where I'm at right now or be prepared to be where I'm at right now if I had not worked, with Adam for the 2 years on the men's side and 1 year on the women's side, because like I said, it was like getting a master's degree in coaching water polo.
What was it like, obviously, going to Occidental College, and what did you accomplish?
Yeah, so that was Occidental. Which I previously just touched on. And again, I mean, it was great. Larry was awesome. And it was my first college coaching experience, and getting to travel with them and really try to work in a very poor facility. They just built a brand new one there, which is beautiful, but it was a shallow, deep pool and tough to coach in, but a challenge. And I think I grew from that. And again, just kind of gave me some more exposure to the college game, but I wasn't there very long, but I have nothing but good things to say about the school and Larry.
What was it like, obviously, getting to coach both the men's and women's water polo at UCLA?
Very different. Obviously both programs were really serious, and winning matters there and results matter. But very different. And again, when I started, it was 2 years on the men's side at UCLA, and the men's program hadn't won a national championship since 2004. So it had been, I think, a 9-year drought when I got there. And Adam Wright, the head coach, had been there since 2009. So it was going into his 4th or 5th season. And he had been knocking on the door from day one. His first year, they made the final and almost won it. And so really had been right there. And so, I went into a program that had grown a lot, and learned a lot through some adversity and through, just experience. And I think, so I kind of had hit the ground running because a lot of the guys had obviously a jump start on what was going on there and what their system was. So for me, it was playing catch up in the beginning and then trying, to help as much as I could, while at the same time learning as much as I could. I think, our second year, we were able to win the national championship, and that was incredible. I don't even know how to describe it. How much work and time and effort went into that. It was also obviously very rewarding for, Adam and the guys who had been waiting, 4 or 5 years. They'd been part of that program to do that. It was my second year, with the program. The women's side, I started off as a volunteer assistant, with some really talented teams and really some great coaches, Brandon Brooks, Molly Cahill. Really loved working with them. They're awesome. And then when Adam took over the women's program in 2017, I was able to, or 2018, I was able to work with him for a season and see him, take the women's program from what it was and try to transform it into his vision. And that was also eye-opening experience because, when I got to the men's program, he had already had that thing running. So I wasn't there from the initial steps. And now I got to see him, take a program from pretty much, what he wanted to do and, or where it was to make it to what he wanted to do. So I got to see his plan kind of from day one, which was really eye-opening and just, very inspiring. And I learned a lot.
What was that like, obviously, going to the 2014 national championship for the men's?
Yeah, it was incredible. Those guys were awesome. And I really feel, the year before in 2013, we missed out on even making the tournament, and that was heartbreaking. And that was really, really tough to swallow, and I think, again, we learned a lot from that experience and what we had to do during the regular season to ensure our spot in the national championship. And, we had a pretty good season in 2014, obviously a really talented team, but SC was really good and Stanford was really good. And other teams, of course, as well. And we didn't play well at all in the MPSF tournament. We played very poorly. So we there were no guarantees. We thought we were in. We ended up getting the 1 seed, which was incredible. And then, I had to head coach the very first game of the tournament because Adam Wright was serving a sit-out penalty from a previous incident that happened the year 2 years prior. So I had to be the head coach of a NC2A water polo game against UC San Diego, and that was, of course, fun for me. But little bit nerve wracking and making sure that we got the job done and got to the final, which we did. And then, playing a team like SC, who had just been dominant, won 6 titles in a row, and just a dynasty, and with the best player, in the country, and maybe the best player in a long time in college water polo, and Kostas Giannidounias from Greece. And we went up on him, 7-4, and he scored 3 straight goals to tie at 7-7. And at that point, like, I think teams that in the past may have kind of had like an oh crap moment, and we didn't. And we could just see how calm we were and how confident we were that even though that we had just given up 3 straight goals in a game that we were in control of, that we still had an opportunity to finish it, in the right way. And we did. And we were able to, call timeout and set up a play and score a goal, and then hold on and make one last stop to secure the victory. So, obviously, just thrilling and everything you kind of work for, and so exciting. I mean, how many people get to be a part of a national championship team?
What was that itch like for you to obviously get that opportunity to be the head coach, the interim head coach, to help you now where you are now at Princeton as the head men's water polo coach?
Yeah, I will say, even kind of like I mentioned before, more so than just that one game, Adam just delegated so much responsibility that everything set me up to be a head coach right now. It wasn't just, the game coaching experience. If there's one thing I think I had going into the UCLA job was, I'd been a head coach for a long time at the high school and club level. So I knew what that, kind of entailed for the most part. Obviously it's a different speed and different level in college, but the other side of it, the compliance side, the NC2A side, the dealing with all the different departments at the university, how to handle college athletes versus high school athletes, so on and so forth. I mean, I learned so much on that side from Adam and from UCLA that prepared me to be a head coach, that I came in, knowing pretty much exactly what to expect. I think had I gone straight from the high school coaching game to college, the water polo side, I wouldn't have been as maybe as dialed in on, but definitely the other side I would have been completely lost on.
What was that like, obviously going to Princeton and becoming the first head coach in your career?
Amazing. Water polo is a small sport, and especially on the men's side. So, there aren't that many programs. We're across the country, collegiately. We're talking D1, D2, D3, not that many. There are a lot of club teams, but not, in that realm, and especially D1. So there aren't that many positions. This isn't a job that comes up often. And a lot of times it goes to alumni of the university or player Olympians, really, really top level players. And as I mentioned before, I didn't even play college water polo. So I'm not someone who is a big name as an athlete, and so to get that opportunity to coach, not only at the D1 collegiate level, but a university like Princeton is just incredible. Oddly enough, I had come out to run a camp and a clinic for USA Water Polo the December prior. And so that was the first time I've ever been at the university, was the December prior to being offered the job, and got to see how beautiful the campus was. And again, that was December, so it was cold and snowy and all those things that you don't get in California. But I loved it. The pool was obviously great, but the university and the town were phenomenal. So when the job came up, obviously I knew I had to interview for it, and I was very fortunate that at the time, my fiance, now my wife, her family, not her immediate family, but her parents or her mother's family grew up in New Jersey. So I knew that she would be open to that move from California to the East Coast, knowing that she had, aunts and uncles and cousins very nearby, and she had made a trip to the Jersey Shore every, summer. So that was fortunate. I think there were a lot of places she might have put the kibosh on, but this wasn't one of them. And so, just getting the opportunity to just interview for the job, and then of course being offered the job, and since I've been out there, I just absolutely love it.
What was it like, obviously, and how is it like balancing being the men's water polo coach, but then having to be the assistant women's water polo coach?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting dynamic, and I think there are good parts of it, and there are tough parts of it. Being honest, I think the previous model was there was one head coach for both, Louis Nicolau, and he had a separate assistant for the men and the women. The challenge with that, of course, is the head coach of being the head coach of both programs is it's tough to recruit, because you're off season when you're normally recruiting, you're spending with the other team. And so the assistant was left doing most of the recruiting, which definitely works out, but there's a bonus to having the head coach, doing some of the recruiting. I think that, making this change where we have separate head coaches has helped in that regard for sure. Like, for instance, right now I'm in California recruiting, and the women are playing a game currently against Villanova, and I wouldn't be able to do both, if it's under the previous model. So that has helped, really have myself focus, I would say, most of my time on the men, but also work with the women's team, and then Derek the opposite. And then we have another assistant, Savannah, who works with both of us, and she's great. Previously it was Kara Borkovic, and she was awesome as well. But Derek and I are different and have different coaching styles. So, in the fall, he has to kind of adapt to what, my vision is for the men's team. And then I have to do the same in the spring for the women's team. But I love coaching both. I mean, the guys are awesome. And I have so much fun coaching them, and the girls are great. I mean, they're super eager to learn, and really dedicated group. And I have had so much, enjoyment coaching women's water polo at UCLA, and then now here at Princeton.
What is that like? Obviously, as you said, that the boys are in the fall and then the girls are in the spring. How is that like, obviously, having that balance of, okay, not both sports playing at the same time?
It's a lot easier for sure. Again, in the fall, my entire focus is the men's team. If there are any off-season women's practices, I'm not there. Derek is running those. And then vice versa now in the spring. My main focus, of course, is on the women's team right now because they're in season, but also, putting a lot of time into our men's off-season trainings, which I'm at. And then, our off-season games when they come up in April, and then, doing a lot of effort into recruiting and scheduling for the fall season. But it would be impossible if they're in the same season. So it's super helpful that they're separated.
What are some of the things that you've accomplished on both sides, the men's and the women's side?
At Princeton?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really like to talk about myself. I'll talk about the program. The 2018, which was my first year, we had 6 tremendous seniors, and they were, I can't even imagine going into that a brand new program as late as I got hired without having senior leadership like we had. And then the alumni support is just incredible. And they were able to take a lot off my plate as well. And of course, the administration at Princeton is second to none in the athletic administration. So they did everything to make me feel comfortable and let me focus on coaching. And then we have just such great parent support. The parents of the athletes are phenomenal. But my first year, we were able to win the tournament championship, the NWPC tournament championship. And that was awesome. That was a really stressful year. That was really tough, jumping into just everything new, living in a new part of the country and a new climate, and learning Princeton and how the athletic department and the academic side operate there, getting to know all the athletes. And then I had been coaching women's water polo for the previous 3 years. So getting to know all of our competition, that was a big challenge. So again, having the support I previously mentioned was great. And all together, we were able to win the championship that first year. And that was awesome because we had lost to Harvard both times we'd played them in the regular season, and then to beat them in the final was, a great experience. But then we lost, the NC2A playing game in a game where we were up by 5 and we never should have, lost. And so that was an experience that, all credit to GW for holding on to that to win. But man, was that educational. And then the second year, we went through some growing pains, and we had a lot of 1-goal losses. But again, had a really young team, and we were starting, I think, 5 freshmen and 2 sophomores, and really planning for the future, and still had some great seniors. But we had a tough year, and then we're able to make it to the final. Actually, I think playing our best water polo at the end of the year. Again, had lost twice to Harvard in the regular season. And I think one of them, if not both, were not that close. And we were able to take them to the brink in that final game. We lost by 1, but man, we played well. I thought we outplayed them, to be honest. And I thought, again, we played our best water polo at the end of the year, but just came up a bit short. But I was really optimistic at that point that we were kind of turning the corner on changing the culture and what the future was going to look like. Again, because of how young we were and just because of the athletes we were recruiting into the program. And didn't get a third year. I really thought we were going to be special, the third year I was there, but with COVID, we got, the year got canceled. And so that was tough, of course, on everybody for a lot of reasons. But this last year was maybe one of my most, favorite years coaching water polo ever. I think the COVID year reset a lot of us, myself included, on perspective, on valuing, the sport and the opportunity to play the sport, and how, it can be taken away from you at any moment. And I think, there's no question we brought in a really talented recruiting class, and returning a lot of great players. And I had high expectations for this year, but it went, I won't say better than I expected, but as well as I think it could have gone, for the most part. And it was just a lot of fun. I mean, the results are great, but the practices were better. These guys just compete day in and day out and just go for it. And I let them kind of come up with a theme for each year, and they came up this year with competing against each other for each other, meaning we're going to go at each other every day in practice, and it's for a purpose. It's to make each other better and prepare ourselves for the weekend. And every day in practice was a competition. I mean, these guys were at it, and we kept score in everything we did. And if the scorekeeper was off, for half a second, he heard about it. I mean, it was that important to them, every day in practice, that they were, like I said, competing and trying to make each other better. Great year. We're able to win the conference title and move on to the NC2A playing game. And we're able to play really well against a shorthanded Fordham team who was missing a couple of their, some of their top guys, and played really well in that game, and was able to hold on to win, and then advance to the second round of the NC2A, playing against UCLA and at UCLA, which I was really looking forward to for a lot of reasons. Obviously being my alma mater and coaching, not my alma mater, but where I just coached, and knowing the program so well, and the coaching staff so well, and also because I thought we were playing so well at that time, and you only get so many opportunities to compete with the top teams, and I thought we earned that opportunity, and I was really looking forward to it. And we went out there. The unfortunate part, though, is that myself and three of our athletes tested positive for COVID the day prior and weren't able to be there at the game. So, I wasn't able to coach the game. A couple of our athletes weren't able to play in the game, and assistant coaches and the players that were there, they battled hard, and they did extremely well and did the best they could. And UCLA is obviously one of the best programs in the country. So we fell short. I just wish, that we had opportunity to compete at full strength against them. Again, not saying we would have won the game, but I would have liked to seen, what we could have done at full strength. So overall, I think that this year was just so special for so many reasons, and mostly because of the guys, and they really helped me change my approach in coaching, and to be way more collaborative than I think I've been in the past. I think, and really value their input and their opinions on a lot of things that I think I've taken probably too much control over in the past, and kind of, again, delegated a bit more. And that was really helpful for me. So I think just in the way we were able to change the culture. And then, women's side, I just feel terrible for them. The first year was awesome, and just getting to know them and the program was special. But and we ended up making the final against Michigan, and lost to a very good Michigan team, but battled super hard and played them as close as anybody on the East Coast has played them. But the second year, I mean, we got maybe a month in before COVID hit, and then the season's canceled, and then year 3 they don't even get a season, so we haven't really even had a chance. I think that's the tough part. And now obviously we're in season now with a great group of girls, and I'm excited to see where we can go with that program. But just it's like starting afresh, because it's been so long. I think they said it was, I can't even remember, over 650 something days since they played a game. We played our first game earlier this year in Santa Barbara. Both very special, and feel very privileged to be working with both programs.
What does a typical game day look like on the water polo side?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was at UCLA, most of the time we would play one game a weekend, maybe two. But if we had two, it was one game a day, unless it was at a tournament. And at Princeton, it's just not that way. We go into our conference weekends, and we're playing 3 games a weekend. Almost all the time. So it's not uncommon to play 2 games in a day. So the preparation during the week is very different. But the day of the game, I don't think it's anything that exciting. I think it's pretty standard, depending on what time the game is. We're trying to have the guys, wake up and eat 3 hours prior to the start of the game. We'll usually have our meeting, which is just kind of last minute reminders of game prep, of what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to get out of that game. And of course, some scouting reminders of who we're playing, and other things. And we try to talk about, something else just unrelated as well in those meetings. And then, the guys are warming up, and, I'm kind of doing my last minute game prep of things that I think are important to keep in mind during the game, and also just trying to do some mindfulness and maybe some meditation and clearing my head before the game. And then you just kind of go into the zone when the game starts and trust that the preparation during the week has prepared, both the coaching staff and also the athletes for what we have ahead of us. And at the same time, being ready to make any adjustments in game that we need to make, but ultimately knowing that, if we didn't do our job during the week, it really doesn't matter. We can't, pull a rabbit out of our hat most of the time on game day. You can be lucky every now and then, but hopefully we're prepared for whatever may come our way. And that really came into play, I think, in that NWPC championship game against St. Francis, who was hot. They were playing really, really good water polo at the end of the year, and they went up 3-0 on us, and we were able to score 6 straight goals and come back and win. And again, that wasn't anything special we did on game day. That was the preparation and the entire season of playing really tough opponents prepared us for that. But that was, sorry, a little tangent. Going back to your question, and then once the game's over, obviously the guys are warming down, and we'll do a pretty brief post-game meeting. I don't like to do a long post-game meeting. I feel that a lot of times it can be emotionally driven, and there are certain things that may stand out in your head, but once you watch the film, you get a better idea of potentially what really went down, and things that either, went well or didn't go well. I think that a lot of times when you are experiencing a game, the things that went well, when you watch them on tape, were good, but maybe not as good as you remember them. And the same is true for the opposite. Things that you think were terrible and that you really want to harp on, you watch the tape and they weren't really as bad, or something else caused it that you didn't see. So, I think having an extensive post-game meeting isn't productive. So we try to keep those brief, and then obviously get the guys fed as soon as possible when the game is over, and start thinking about what's next.
What does the recruitment process look like for prospective student athletes looking to play water polo on either side?
So the NC2A allows us to have first contact with them June 15th following their sophomore year in high school. Now, that doesn't mean they can't reach out to us sooner. We just can't respond or communicate back. So that's via email or text, phone call. In person, we can't have contact with them until August 1st, leading into their junior year off of our campus. So there's some restrictions there that I think, student athletes should be aware of, but I think they still should reach out to us in their sophomore year, just expressing interest if Princeton is a school that they're looking at, or the Ivy League. Obviously, academics are first and foremost the most important, and they have to start thinking about what classes they need to take as far as rigor, to put themselves in a position to be admitted to the university. And then, of course, keeping us posted on the water polo side. We, as part of the Ivy League, don't have athletic scholarships, so there's a tremendous amount of financial aid, and it is tremendous. But we're not a scholarship school, so we have to look at that and how many athletes we can kind of support with the admissions process. Each year can vary. So I think, obviously the athletes have to be very proactive and have to reach out to us and express their interest, and really stay on top of the academic piece, and keep us posted on, what they're doing water polo wise with their high schools, with their clubs, maybe the Olympic development program, or within USA Water Polo, any camps or clinics they're attending. We run 2 summer camps, every summer at Princeton, if they want to get a little more face time with the coaches, or see the university, or see, live in the dorms for a few days. Cafeteria food, which is excellent at Princeton. They get to experience that. But it really starts, like I said, kind of the end of their sophomore year, and then leading into their junior year. And then, ultimately, for the most part, we're making a lot of decisions, I would say, between, March of their junior year until October or so of their senior year. But a lot of times, a lot of those decisions are made in the summer between their junior and senior year.
Of course, what are some of the things that you look at as a head coach in those prospective student athletes when you go see them?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me, outside of the academic piece, which of course they have to be even in consideration for Princeton admissions, but from a water polo standpoint, the most important thing for me is fit. We have a really special group, and I think a lot of groups will tell you how close knit they are and how much they are like a family. But I've never seen anything like this, and you have to be on the team to really experience how close these guys are. We have, highly, highly recruited players from some of the best players in the States, but also from overseas. And then we have some guys that are walking onto the program who'd never played water polo before getting to Princeton. And every one of them is treated the same, and every one of them treats each other the same. And I think that's really, really special and unique. And so for us, we know that, it takes one bad apple to spoil the group. And so we have to make sure that anybody we bring into our program is a good fit for our culture, and understands, again, that academics are the priority at Princeton. There's no question. However, water polo is not an afterthought by any means. And we're extremely serious about what we're trying to do, and changing the culture of water polo and collegiate water polo, and really dedicated and bringing in the right kind of student athletes who, again, aren't satisfied for just what it is right now. That aren't, it's not good enough just to beat some of the East Coast teams and be competitive every now and then with a few of the West Coast teams. We want to compete with everyone. This past season, we played, Cal won the national championship. We played them to really ultimately a 1-goal game. I mean, they scored kind of an empty net goal at the end of the game to make it a 2-point margin, but really a 1-goal game early in the season. Then we played them at their place, and we were tied 11-11, with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and they won the national championship. And that's really important to us, to play teams like that, and to play UCLA, and to play Stanford and SC and the best teams. And we try to make our schedule as tough as possible. So when we're talking about recruiting, we got to bring in guys that are hungry and again, want to come to Princeton, of course, because it's one of the best, if not the best, universities in the world, and is going to prepare them for life after college, with or without water polo. But two, because they're passionate about the sport, and are very understanding of what it means to be part of the ultimate team sport, in my opinion. Of course, I'm biased, but I think that work ethic, coachability, are all extremely important, and just kind of being really dynamic. And a lot of times athletes will play a certain position in high school, and they'll come and we'll ask them to play a different position or a different style, or run a different, system than they ran. And so they have to be open to that, and really eager to learn and hungry to learn and grow. Because again, for us, we're always trying to get better. And we can't get better by staying the same. We have to kind of keep pushing that bar and pushing that bar. So finding the right kind of athletes that are in that mode, and are not, that don't want to go play water polo on the East Coast because they think it's going to be easier or less of a commitment. While the Ivy League restrictions do hold us back a little bit further than some of the schools on the West Coast, we don't want to use that as a crutch. We want to find creative ways to, still be competitive and compete with everybody, like a lot of teams on our campus do. So, it's just, again, it's finding the people who are the student athletes who want to be elite at everything they do in the classroom and in the pool.
What does the official visit look like for those prospective student athletes looking to go to Princeton?
So yeah, official visit. It's been a little while, just COVID, but basically, we want them to spend as much time with our student athletes as possible. So yes, we'll do a meeting at some point with the coaching staff, and we'll probably take them out to dinner. But a lot of the times I get to know these student athletes really well through phone conversations, Zoom conversations, home visits, going to different pool decks and watching them play, and they get to know me really well. But when a student gets to Princeton, they don't spend a lot of time with the head coach outside of the pool deck, so it's way more important that they are with the students that are currently on the team, and they get to understand, is this a good fit for me? Do I fit in with this group? And then for the group to get a good idea of that prospective student athlete on their official visit to see, are they a good fit for us? And so I put a lot of value into what our student athletes say about how the official visits went. But in addition to the meetings, or occasional meal with the coaching staff, obviously they're spending a lot of time with the guys in the dorms. The eating clubs are a big part of Princeton, so they get to experience that, sit in on a class if they want to. A lot of times they do. Again, usually if you're thinking about Princeton, you're someone who's pretty serious about your academics. And so that piece is really important, and I think really special, because the collaborative academic experience at Princeton is unlike any other. And so it's people who are really passionate about going to class and learning, and professors who are really passionate about teaching their subjects. So I think that's a really important piece as well. They'll also, get a tour of all of our athletic facilities, as well as the entire university, and get to meet with a lot of our support staff. We have a dean who works kind of as a liaison between academics and athletics, and he'll meet with them. Our director of student services will meet with them. Our trainer, our nutritionists if they want to, our weights coach for sure. And again, just try to give them as much time with our student athletes as possible. And we may schedule some sort of team bonding event if it works out that weekend. Usually we do them when we're not in season. So they may be able to watch an out of season practice, but we're not usually playing games at that point. But they may be able to attend a women's water polo game or a basketball game, or a volleyball game or whatever sport may be in season when they come out. But we try to give them the holistic Princeton experience, because when someone chooses to come to Princeton, you're not choosing just to be a student, and you're not choosing just to be a water polo player. You're getting to do everything. And I think, a lot of times water polo players give up a lot when they're in high school, and there are a lot of things that they have to say no to that their friends get to say yes to that don't play water polo. And it's because it's 365, it's weekends, it's mornings, it's nights, it's nonstop. And so it's a means to an end. It's trying to use that as a vehicle to hopefully help them get into a better college. But again, once they're in college, less than 0.001% are going to continue to play after college, with the national team or maybe a professional league overseas. We don't have a professional league in the States. So ultimately, when they come to Princeton, we don't want them to just be a water polo player and a student. We want them to experience everything that all the rest of their peers that don't play a sport get to experience at Princeton, whether that is the eating clubs or the other organizations or whatever major or class they want to take, or internships or jobs in the summer. And again, anything that a normal college student would get to experience, we want them to have that full experience. So when they come on an official visit, we want them to see that. We want them to see that our student athletes are playing other sports. They're playing basketball or ice hockey in the off season. They're going around to the different organizations on campus and getting to experience everything that Princeton has to offer. So I think that's really important to us as well on the official visit, that they see that we're more than about just water polo in school.
Of course, what advice would you give those prospective student athletes looking to play college water polo?
I mean, I think I'm probably going to repeat what a lot of other coaches of every sport have said, but first and foremost, it's the academic piece. You have to have that. We're especially at Princeton and the Ivy League schools. But no matter where you're looking, the academic piece is going to be really important. And because, as I mentioned previously, especially on the men's side, but even on the women's side, there aren't that many programs in the country compared to like football and basketball, baseball, et cetera. So you have to, put yourself in a position to be admitted to a university without the coach's support or without the scholarship or without the coach's help in any way. So you have a chance to maybe walk on. So that academic piece has to come first, and the work in the classroom. At the same time, while I say that, I think that every student also has to be aware of what their strengths and limitations are. I don't think you have to be a 4.0 student, or 4.5 if you're talking about weighted GPAs. I don't think you have to be a 1500 plus SAT or 34 plus ACT. As long as you're doing the best you're capable of doing. There are some students where, they're going to put everything they have into it, and they're not going to get straight A's, and that's fine. And I don't think they need to put any added stress on themselves if they're not capable. However, if they are capable, and they're not, then that's a different story. It's a different issue. I think that with that, like I said, the water polo piece, just staying on top of identifying coaches, when and where they're playing, is really important, and really giving themselves as much exposure to the college coaches as they can. Some of them are fortunate and play for top high schools and top clubs. So a lot of the college coaches are going to watch them play at Junior Olympics or state championships or regional championships. But some of them don't, to no fault of their own. They just live in a different part of the country or attend a different club or high school. And so with that, there's vehicles like the Olympic Development Program and the national team experience, or like I mentioned before, camps and clinics that are offered at many universities all over the country that they can, enroll in to give themselves exposure, to be seen, and that not only gives them exposure, but also allows them to be coached by some of the top coaches in the country and learn. And I think that's an excellent way to put their name out there and get better. I think it's tough. It's really tough. Like I said, there are only so many spots within college water polo, especially on the men's side. But if someone is driven enough, there is a spot for them. And I think the other part of that is not everybody has to play Division 1, 2, or 3. There are so many club water polo programs in this country a ton of universities that you'd never even think of have club water polo. So if someone really, really wants to play water polo in college, there's a spot for them somewhere. They just have to be, open-minded about it and kind of, again, do some research and find out what schools have it. But there are some phenomenal universities all over the country that have club water polo teams, or D1, D2, or D3 teams. I do think to some extent, if you want it bad enough, you'll find a way to at least give yourself an opportunity. But of course, like anything else, it's not completely in their control. And so a lot of the times does require, some luck, but a lot of legwork, I think, just putting yourself out there and making yourself available. And that falls a lot, not only on the student athlete, but also on the parents. There's a lot of, travel involved in the things I mentioned before with ODP and camps and clinics and even just travel tournaments. So it takes a dedicated family, and community to really put a student athlete in a good position to eventually be recruited, I think.
What advice would you give those college water polo people looking to go on to the Olympics?
I mean, it's got to be your life. That's a whole nother level. You got to be extremely dedicated to be an elite, even high school or club water polo player. And then, a step above that would be to be an elite, college water polo player. But it's not a step then to get to the Olympics. I mean, you're talking a leap, a plane flight. I don't know. I mean, it's just it becomes, instead of, I think, part of your life, it has to be. I mean, we have 12 to 13 athletes, maybe plus an alternate being selected every cycle. The training group is of course bigger than that, but eventually to be selected to be a part of the Olympic Games, that's extremely special. And very few people get to experience it. And so, you have to, I think, set your routine and your habits to what your goals are. And if your goal is to play at the absolute highest level of our game, which is the Olympic Games, then every decision you make, when you're going to bed at night, what you're eating, what you're not eating or drinking, the way you're training, the way you're treating your body through rehab and prehab and just, taking care of yourself and again, getting yourself exposure to the best coaches and the best opportunities. It has to become, kind of a 24/7 thing. I think if you're really going to achieve that goal, that's, it's very special, and there's a reason it's special. And it's a reason that I think those athletes are so emotional when they get selected and they get to attend those games. And of course, if they get to stand on the podium, I'm speaking, of course, speculatively. I've never done any of that myself, but just from the people I've gotten to speak with that have, and it's really all about the journey. So you have to be fully dedicated to that.
What advice would you give those future college coaches and even head coaches looking to get started in the sport?
To be coaches, be a student of the game. Go to coaching clinics, go watch practices of some of the top college coaches or high school coaches, club coaches in the country. Most water polo coaches have kind of an open door policy where you can walk on the deck and take notes or film their practice, maybe not film depending on the part of the season, but watch their practice at least. And you got to be a sponge. I mean, you have to really, really go after it. I touched on some of this earlier. A lot of coaches in our sport are hired simply because they were a good player. Even if they have no coaching experience or limited coaching experience. And sometimes that works out really well, and sometimes it doesn't. So to be someone like myself who didn't play at a high level by any, standard, I think to what you're speaking to, coaches that are in that same, realm that aren't getting offered jobs right away because they were, amazing athletes. You start where you have an opportunity to start. I can tell you that a lot of colleges will take just about any volunteer coach that they can take. We need more coaches on the pool deck. We don't have enough. So, if there's a college close by that you can be a volunteer coach for, even if you're not getting paid, sometimes you can get paid through club, of course, in summer camps, but not through the university. That's a great opportunity to learn and put yourself out there and maybe get an opportunity if maybe an assistant coach at that same university then decides to leave. Now you're in a program where you already know the system, the head coach, the athletes, and maybe you're the perfect fit to take over that job. Or maybe it's another job that opens up through connections that you've made. But for me, I started going to every possible coaching clinic I could, early on to kind of build my base. And then, was very fortunate to get involved with the Los Angeles Water Polo Club, and Rich Corso gave me every opportunity and then some to grow my knowledge of the sport and to be exposed to the highest levels of the sport, to be around, very dedicated coaches and athletes and see how they approached, their craft. And then, for me, knowing that I hadn't played at a high level, what I did, and I don't know if I recommend this because it's definitely not possible for everybody. But I, on my own expense, flew to 3 different cities in Europe and stayed with their clubs for multiple weeks to pretty much just watch practice, and from the 10 and unders all the way through the professional teams, and filmed a lot of it and took a ton of notes. And I have several books of notes that I took while I was over there, and just, again, some good drills, but more so the way they trained and even the way they stretched before games and warmed up and warmed down. So I think, again, that might not be doable for every coach, but I think it is doable to attend, local college practices or high level high school practices or club practices, or clinics that are offered all over the country. A lot of them are virtual now, making it even easier to get to, but there's no substitution for being on deck. And just really exposing yourself to a lot of different coaches. And so you can kind of grow your coaching tree, and also, your knowledge base, and putting yourself out there. But, ultimately, I think there's really 2 paths, 3 paths to being a college coach in our sport. I mean, one, like I mentioned, is being an incredible player who graduated from maybe university or went to the Olympics and are going that route of just, having that name that can help you get a good position. 2, I think, is starting off as a high school coach and then eventually working your way into the club scene and the Olympic development program and the national team program, and kind of making a name for yourself that way and growing. And I definitely went that route. And then third, as I mentioned before, which may be the fastest route, honestly, is to either apply for an assistant coaching position at a lesser known university that a lot of people don't apply for, or being a volunteer assistant at even some of the big name schools that you'd be surprised would be glad to accept a lot of people with not a lot of experience in coaching, but are passionate and have a plan and a dream, and again, building relationships that way. I think that might be the fastest way, because there is so much turnover in the assistant coaching positions in our sport that it wouldn't be uncommon or unheard of for someone to hire a volunteer from their own program who's very familiar with the way they run things.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with the Princeton men's and women's water polo?
Well, good luck finding me. I'm not very active. I'm still learning. It's new for me. So I'm not a very savvy social media presence. Or I don't really have one. Princeton is all over the place. We have our assistant coach does a great job, and our SID and our whole, marketing department. So they're great. All of our links and handles are all over our website. I know PU Athletics is a big one, and Princeton, I think it's P Water Polo. I don't want to tell you the wrong one. I wish I had better knowledge of this stuff, because I know how important it is. And I know that we post a lot of videos and a lot of game updates, on goprincetontigers.com is a great resource. But with the social media, I think all the links are up there. And of course, just, searching Princeton Water Polo, Instagram or Twitter, everything will pop up. But that's an area that I definitely need to grow at, for sure.
Thank you again, Coach Dustin Litvak, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the men's water polo.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Dustin, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.